Hey guys, on my way back to Challenger, I noticed a really weird phenomenon that was going on with a lot of league accounts where people were gaining basically more rank than I thought that they should be for the win rates that they had and the number of games that they had played. And I want to take a look at a couple of example OP.GGs to describe this phenomenon that's actually happening at all ranks. It's actually very straightforward. But we'll look at some OP.GGs to explain as an example. But pretty much what has happened here is if we look at the last year, we had for the first time ever 3 ranked resets in a single year. And one of the things that obviously did is it caused people's accounts to be kind of artificially lower rank than they should have been, especially if they weren't playing a lot of games. So especially if you were playing 1 or 2 or 3 games or less a day on your account, because what was ending up happening is if you were having a positive climb and plus 10 games that split or plus 20 games that split, but you were getting reset instantly over and over again, your gains were only helping your MMR go higher, but your face rank was getting reset so often that you weren't actually seeing those gains come to fruition in terms of your actual face rank. And so we see lots of accounts like this one where the player had made a lot of progress in split 1 and split 2 and split 3, going from Emerald 2 to Diamond 2 and winning maybe 30 more ranked games than they lost. I mean, if we look at this guy's account, we can actually see that his previous split, he went 129 and 102 for positive 27 ranked games, let alone what he did. And that's just what he did, last split. So, he may have even done other things these other splits. So if you took a split off, or if you didn't play very much each split, and you had positive wins over losses from your last splits, no matter what rank you were at, you're going to experience a very positive climb, even if you're winning 49 or 48 or 50% of your games. And so we see accounts like this one that were never masters before, all of the sudden shooting up to Master 0 LP with a 49% win rate. And you may be thinking to yourself, like, how is it even possible that this guy who was like in D2 for 200 games is all of a sudden getting to Master 0 LP, going up 2 full divisions on a negative win rate? It's because the guy's MMR was Masters to begin with at the end of last season. And so he had built up enough wins over losses that he basically should have been Masters had there not been so many resets in the first place. So when we go back and we look at even his previous splits before that, when there were a lot of resets, we can see that in this split 2, the guy barely played any ranked games. And if anything, he was probably slightly positive this split as well, but he barely played any games. He had 11 games played on his most played champion, right? So if we go back and look at split 1, again, like a decent number of games played, but nowhere near the hundreds of games that we saw in his previous split. So really what happened to this guy is he had 3 or maybe 2 slightly positive splits and then 1 really positive split. But the entire time he's building up a huge amount of MMR, and the only real change to his rank that he saw was going from Emerald to Diamond here in this last split. But obviously his MMR was much higher than that. So even just continuing to win 50% of his games means that he's holding his own and winning 50% of his games at Master Tier 0 LP MMR. And so the guy is just simply seeing his face rank reflect the MMR that he had built up over these previous splits. It's very, very common to see stuff like this. And this is something that is going to apply to every single rank, because every single rank is going to have players like this. In fact, you're going to have maybe even more players in lower rank who are going to experience this phenomenon, because a lot of people who are playing in gold or in platinum are much more casual players who are much less likely to be playing 4 or 5 games a day. So you're going to see a lot of people who are maybe gold and took a split off, but then had an amazing split, or had 3 amazing splits but didn't play the game that much, and so they were getting reset constantly. Their face rank wasn't going up, but the entire time they were building up this huge amount of MMR behind the scenes, And that's going to suddenly lead to a lot of people exploding into this much higher rank than they ever were before, because all of the ranked progress that they should have made over the last 3 splits is all coming to fruition now in this split. Now the LP gains are allowed to be higher and LP losses are allowed to be lower right away, and that they're not going to get reset right away again in the immediate future, because we're doing one ranked reset this year. So what you're going to see is this phenomenon where across all of the ranks, lots of players who had very positive previous splits, or who maybe were much higher rank a year ago, but have been reset so many times that they've actually gone down in rank, while their MMR has stayed mostly the same because they barely played any games. All of these players are going to see an explosion in their rank to a much higher rank than they were before. And so we're going to see that across the board. One of the effects of this is it's actually going to have a huge effect, especially in high elo, on the Challenger and the Grandmaster cutoff. If you're not familiar with how these cutoffs work, basically at the start of the season, there's a fixed LP requirement that you have to get to 200 LP to get to Grandmaster, or you have to get to 500 LP to get to Challenger. But then because those ranks are based on a certain number of people in them, once 300 players get to Challenger, or the top, or I think it's 1,000 players get to Grandmaster. I'm actually blanking on whether it's 700 people in Grandmaster and then 300 in Challenger, or whether it's an additional 1,000 in Grandmaster. But once that number of people fills up those ranks, then the LP threshold goes up based on who the lowest person is. So for example, if we go back and look at Challenger, there's 300 people in Challenger, and the lowest person, who is number 300, has 634 LP, then that's where the cutoff is. And it obviously updates once a day, but we don't need to get into all those details. So essentially, the way that this works is based on the number of people who are capable of getting to that rank and pushing that threshold, there's going to be some natural competition that is going to drive up the LP threshold. To put this into perspective, what we're seeing here is a phenomenon caused by this same thing, where there appears to be a lot of LP inflation, which is causing the threshold to be higher than we would expect at this time in the year, and much, much higher than we were seeing, let's say, last split, especially at this time into the reset. But it's actually not that there's a problem with the LP gains. It's the same phenomenon. It's that there's a lot of players who should have been 600 LP, but were reset so many times before they had the chance to climb that they just never got to 600 LP before, myself included. So when I had plus 20 wins over losses for the last 2 splits, but was stuck at 400 LP because I was only playing like 2 ranked games a day or something like that, I'm the exact type of situation where you would expect, okay, all of a sudden this player is able to climb to 600 LP very easily because of the fact that their MMR was already there. The only reason why I wasn't there is because there were too many resets happening at the same time. So what's going to happen now is there's other players who are like that. And so normally when the threshold starts going up from 500 to 510, 520, etc., and the threshold starts building up, usually the reason why it's building up is because people who were 500 LP, 600 LP, 700 LP the previous split, they finally climb back up, and now they're there as well, and they can push the threshold versus the players who were actually only like 500 last split. What happens now, this split, which is completely unusual compared to any other split in the history of League, is that we've got not just the people who were 500 plus LP as a finish last split, but you've got other players like me who finished 400 LP, but my MMR was 600 LP. And so all of a sudden you have all these extra players that you wouldn't have expected to be competing to push the threshold up, who actually were there in terms of MMR, but didn't play the game enough to be there in terms of face rank. All of a sudden, all of those players have gained enough LP that their face rank is an accurate reflection of their MMR. And now all of those extra people are competing to push the threshold and the cutoff up. And so what we're seeing is the threshold is going up by insane margins, 10 LP a day since it first went above 500. And that is way more than we would see in any other split. because there's so many more people competing for the threshold now than there were before, due to the fact that the LP gains and stuff like that and the resets are all actually fixed and normal. So this isn't a problem. It's not because there's a lot of inflation. You're probably going to hear a lot of players say that this is like an inflated split, or that everyone just has higher LP. And that, 600 LP now doesn't mean the same thing as it did last split and stuff like that. And to a certain extent, that's true, but it's not because there's a problem with the LP gains and the LP losses. It's just that people's rank and their LP is more of a reflection, an accurate reflection of where they were in terms of MMR, especially in high elo, but also in those other ranks. So you're going to see gold players who are winning 20 more games than they were losing every split, but only playing 100 games a split, are all of a sudden going to shoot up to platinum with a 50% win rate. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the guy's going to maintain a 50% win rate in platinum because his MMR was there for the last 2 splits. He just never got the chance for his face rank to accurately reflect that, because the system was actually broken when we were resetting 3 times a year, and it's actually normal and fixed now. So what this means in terms of these cutoffs, and I want to talk, to a smaller audience of GM and Challenger players, is that these cutoffs are going to go up a lot higher than you might expect. So the threshold for Challenger ended at 776 LP last split, but we're going to see that threshold reach 776 well before 4 months into the year. But it's going to start to slow down a lot, because in the same way that once it gets to 700 or 800, normally it would start to slow down. So instead of 10 LP a day, it would be 9 and 8 and 7, and it's going to start to fall off and slow down. And one of the main reasons for that is the higher up the threshold goes, the less people are capable of getting there. And that's doubly true this year, because not only is it that there weren't, if it goes up to, let's say, 700, there aren't as many people who finished 700 or 800 last year to be pushing that threshold up above 700. But on top of that, there aren't going to be as many of those accounts whose MMR was 700 or 800 as there were who were 600 or 500. So you're going to see a much bigger push in the LP threshold to Challenger, and the same applies to the GM cutoff at the beginning of the year. But then this is going to start to slow down dramatically as you just have a certain limited number of players and accounts that were actually capable of hitting, let's say, 700 LP. So I'm not somebody who's out here thinking that because of the current trajectory we're on, we're going to be at 1,000 LP cutoff by April, or 1,500 LP cutoff by fall or something like that. I think that the LP cutoff is going to start to slow down significantly as all of these players who were 500 LP only in MMR and 600 LP MMR, but not actually that face rank, get back to those ranks. But you're going to have less and less of those people at 700 and 800 and 900 and 1,000. So I don't think we're going to see the LP threshold go up by insane margins and push to like 1,000 right away or anything like that. Now, it is worth noting as well, in more competitive servers where there are more people who are capable of hitting that threshold, you do see, for example, in Korea, a much higher threshold because it's a more competitive server, and a slightly lower threshold than Korea in EU, but much higher than NA. And that's just because those are more competitive servers. So you can actively use the LP cutoffs and thresholds to kind of see and compare how much more competition there is in a region like Korea than there is in a region like NA. And, you could do the same thing with other ones, like Oceania, for example. It's still at 500, and some of these other minor ones. So you get the idea, right? This is essentially what's going on. Now, another phenomenon that I experienced was, I thought it was very strange, and I don't have a good answer to this. I don't really know. Only Riot would know this. But I do have some speculation on this. I thought it was very strange that when I was climbing, especially in Diamond, and very specifically in Diamond, like between Diamond 4 and Diamond 1, but then right when I got to Masters, it changed. I was gaining exactly plus 30 LP and minus 10 LP the entire time that I went from D4 to D1 this split, climbing back up. And then once I got into Masters, it suddenly dropped from plus 30 minus 10 to like 22 and 18 again. And I thought that that was really, really strange because normally you're probably familiar. And I know with my Smurf accounts and at lower ranks and things like that, you're used to, gaining, you come out of placements and you get really big LP gains. Maybe you even get like plus 40, plus 42, plus 43, random numbers. Not exactly random, they're based on your MMR, but you're getting these kind of, random numbers that aren't at exact increments like tens and things like that. And then it starts to slow down, and it slows down rapidly at first. So you go from plus 43 or something to plus 37 to plus 35. And, as you get back to your main rank, it starts to even out. And eventually, once you get back to your main rank, you'll probably have around plus 20, minus 20 again. But what was really weird about this was it was like tied to a specific rank. Between these ranks, I was only gaining exactly plus 30, minus 10. It was not going, from plus 30 to 29 to 28 to 27. It was like I was just at exactly plus 30 the entire time. And then I got to Masters and it was like a switch flicked. And all of a sudden I was gaining plus 22. That seemed very strange to me. And I even saw other players, op.gg's and things like that, UGG's, where you can see the LP gains, or streamers and stuff like that who are also climbing back to high elo at the start of the split. And I noticed the exact same thing with other people as well, that other high elo Master Plus players were gaining exactly plus 30, minus 10. And I don't really know what to make of it. My best guess is that they implemented some kind of maximum LP gain and minimum LP losses for super, ultra high MMR Master Plus accounts when they were climbing through Diamond or something like that, in an attempt to overcorrect the problem that they had. Well, they didn't necessarily overcorrect it, but in an attempt to fix the problem that they had last split, where they had initially tuned down those LP gains to such an extreme, absurd degree that they had to hotfix and change in a patch how much LP Master Plus players were gaining, because it was taking forever to climb back through Diamond, even though everyone's MMR and skill level and stuff like that was all good. So I think in an attempt to overcorrect that, they did that. Now, I know from Smurf accounts as well that this is not something that happens for accounts under Master Plus. So, there are going to be people who are going to say like, well, I got plus 42 like before, but unless you were Master Plus, that's just a different situation. So I think that they did something with Master Plus accounts where when you were climbing through Diamond, there was some sort of maximum LP gain or minimum LP loss, or maybe even a fixed LP gain for everyone and a fixed LP loss until you got back to Masters. I don't really know what to make of that, so I'm just kind of throwing that out there and curious what people say. But the main gist of it is that this split, more than any other split before, there are just huge ranked gains that people are going to be experiencing as huge gains that people have built up and not realized. They have these unrealized, gigantic unrealized gains from the previous 3 splits where there were just way too many resets too frequently, and so people didn't have enough time to climb. Now what you're going to experience is with really nice LP gain and losses that are reflective of your MMR and only the 1 reset for the whole year, you're going to experience a lot of those progress that you should have made in previous splits coming to fruition this split, and that's going to feel really good for a lot of players. I would also encourage people, if they've quit playing ranked or something like that, to give it a shot. I know, like, luring people back in, I'm not like paid by Riot or anything like that, but I really think if you quit playing League, or if you know somebody who quit playing League over the past couple of splits because it was so hard to climb because of all the resets, and they felt like they should have been making progress because they were winning more games than they were losing, but they just didn't have time to see those gains through, or quit because they were frustrated that they weren't going up in rank even though they should have been. Give the game a shot. Play some games and see if once you start climbing this split, if your rank doesn't start to return to where it kind of should have been in terms of MMR based on the progress that you've made. Because you've probably, a lot of accounts probably have a lot of built up gains that are just waiting to be unlocked basically in this split. So with that being said, that's just what's going on. Let me know what you guys think about that. I don't think Riot needs to change anything. I think it's totally healthy for the game that people's rank is a more accurate reflection of where their MMR is. That being said, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.